Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are here on YouTube and you'd like to join the conversation, first join Zoom, and you'll see the link down below. Then join Mukana, and then you can ask questions and post chat if you'd like. If you think that you could answer some of the questions as opposed to ask the questions, it's a great way to get out in front of everybody and show what you know, but in a nice way, hopefully. We would love to have you join the panel. We are always looking for new folks who are doing this work and think they can contribute to these answers, whether it's, I think a lot of times we talk about it, people think that they only have a certain thing. Like we were talking earlier about one of our members that just knows IT, doesn't do as much of this. And I was like, we definitely need more people that can answer IT questions. And so we're trying to drag folks in. If you have a specific, you may get up here and just hang out on the panel and maybe answer a question 2 or 3 times a week. That's great. You know, the issue is that, you know, what we're trying to do all the time is have a panel here that can answer almost any question that could be asked anywhere near media production and virtual production. So we would love to have you. If you're an event organizer and you want to talk about events, if you want to, again, you may sit up here and a lot of times not answer any questions, and that's just fine. We'd love to have you on the panel for that one moment where you can show us what you know. So if you do want to do that, you have to be here by 6:40. We do mic checks. Once we do the mic checks, it's closed. It's a little different today. We'll open up for mic checks again for the education hour, and then we're going to switch over to another Zoom meeting for Zoom OSC. So it's a little different on Saturdays, but generally, at least for the first hour, you need to be here by 6:40 a.m. Now we open the doors at 6, and before that, we're just kind of talking. We're having coffee, we're having tea, doing our thing, and so that's a little bit different. But you can come in, check your system, see if it's working, see how things are kind of coming together there, and we'd love to have you come in and just see if you're ready for the panel. We do have some. If you're on this email list that we have, we do have an earlier pre-show, which has turned out to be a lot of fun. I don't talk about it very much. It's kind of it's a little bit of the speakeasy, but it's there, and we're having a great time. Just kind of mulling through things. It's less Q&A and more mulling. At 7 o'clock, we start the questions. Any question you have around virtual production or media production is fair game. And so go ahead and ask those questions in Mukana. Vote the questions up. We spend more time on the questions on the front end and less time on each question on the back end. So the more you can ask the questions early, as well as the more you can vote those questions up so you really prioritize our conversation, the better. You really are the producers as the viewers. Today we'll have second hour is going to be education. We kind of tend to add a lot of educators to it and have a roundtable. And then at 9 o'clock until 11-ish, we're going to have Andy Carluccio, who's here. He's going to be leading the Zoom OSC training that we've started last week. So it's a busy morning. And let's go ahead and get into the questions. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, first one comes in from TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Should I plug my ATEM Mini Pro into my network? It's connected to my Mac via USB-C for use as a webcam in Zoom. How would plugging it into my network affect the usage as a webcam? Curious because I want to use ATEM OSC, and it does not seem to work with a localhost IP address of 27001 self.
I would absolutely plug it into the network. I plug all the ATEMs into the network. What's interesting is that generally the software now, if they're on the same network, it can see all of them, regardless of their IP. It is able to fish out the ATEMs from there. I have a whole slew of ATEMs right now on my network, and so they all pop up. One thing to note is that an ATEM setup, if you have multiple ATEMs, this is just something I was dealing with today or yesterday. In ATEM setup, you can change the name of your ATEM, so they don't all have to be ATEM Mini. So you can open up ATEM settings and go in and call this one the camera ATEM and this one the computer ATEM. That's what mine are named. So I'm building this kind of crazy 4ME switcher with ATEM Minis. So I've got a lot of minis on the network, and I have to figure out which one is which. So anyway, so you can name them there, but I would definitely put them on the network. It's nice that we can just plug a USB-C in and it works. But you'll definitely have more control if you get them on the network. Go ahead, Jan.
I know that you did a show on ATEM Mini, which I missed, and I wanted to see that. So is there a way, are you logging the show? So if I wanted to look up a show on some particular thing that the group has covered, is there a master log to look up things?
I don't know if there's a master log. I mean, every one of them is indexed in on YouTube because you know, and so you should be able to see them there. The second hour is usually named. You might have to scroll through it. We're definitely working on that inside of Mukana. We just don't have it done yet. So there'll be some better tools in the next couple months that let you. The goal is to be able to let you search all the way down to a specific question. It won't be for the past stuff, so it'll be anything. You'll find I'm not very past oriented, so I'm not going to try to go back and fix everything in the past. I'm going to go forward and fix everything in the front end. But what'll happen is eventually is all the meetings will be searchable, and you'll be able to click on it, and it'll just take you to that part of the meeting where we talked about it. And we're just not. We've had that working in previous versions, and we just have to get it working here. Go ahead, Nick, and then Guy.
Yeah, I was just going to go back to the original question and say that I'm not aware of any downside to connecting your ATEM to.
I mean, the only downside is somebody else gets a hold of it and it's a public IP, and then they start switching for you. But outside of that, if you're on your own home network, you shouldn't have any problem. Go ahead, Nick.
Right. But basically, every piece of software that is able to remote control an ATEM is going to do that over the Ethernet port. It's not the libraries, the SDKs that are released work over Ethernet. They don't necessarily work through the USB. And so there's hosts of apps, even just for iPad, to remote control any ATEM that's on your network. So getting it on the network is definitely a great way to just make it so that it's going to become far more versatile, and you could trigger macros and all sorts of things. So
yeah, I'm really excited about or ATEM OSC as well, because most of my work right now has been the apps that I've written to do some of my presentation stuff has been talking to the ATEM directly. And I realized that I can abstract that layer, you know, by using ATEM OSC, where I don't have to talk to it directly. I can send messages back and forth to the ATEM to do what I need and get stuff back from it theoretically. Because right now there's kind of a two-way conversation going on between the ATEM and my apps, but it's been a thing that I have to kind of constantly change with the API, where I think that I can abstract that and then also tie it into things like, by using OSC, I can tie it into things like Zoom OSC and ATEM OSC and have that all
Unreal Engine.
Unreal Engine, exactly. So being able to tie all OSC is a really powerful way that we're kind of a lingua franca of talking to lots and lots of different things all at the same time. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, part of the question was, will it affect the usage of a webcam? And absolutely not. It just shows up still the same way. The benefit to me is that it gets its own IP address if you assign it a static IP, and then it's just a device. So any of your other devices, like if you have a Mac and a PC and an iPad, they can now all open up the software control. On iPad, I use Strata, and I can talk to that ATEM from any. And as I switch from camera 1 to camera 2, all the lights change on all the devices. So it's pretty beneficial to have it on the network, and it just shows up as a device.
Absolutely. Sky?
You have the console.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Go ahead. You should. I shouldn't. You should have it.
It switched back about 2 minutes.
I'd suggest if Bijou's available, I would trust his internet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Bijou? All right, hold on.
Please, thank you.
Well, I already gave it to you, so you can hand it off to Bijou if you want.
Done and done.
All right.
Thank you.
Next question.
Moving on, the next question comes in from Orion Z. Slater in London. Any recommendations on a free or budget meter set for Zoom?
I don't think that the WLM meters is particularly expensive. I don't know how much it is. Yeah, go ahead, TJ.
It's $35.
Okay. Yeah, so $35 to have those meters. Go ahead, Bijou.
Yeah, the other alternative, which we have discussed before, is Uline meters. The basic version is free, and it also has that continuous graph, which is really useful sometimes if you want to see the trend. But the pro version for that is also, I think, about $30, and which is nice to have because it has some extra features. And on Windows, I believe it lets you use the GPU for rendering the graph, which does reduce the load on the CPU.
Yeah, it seems like
What was the name of that again?
Uline meters. I'll drop the link in the Mukana.
Thank you.
Next question.
Comes from Talak Lopez Waterman, our friend in Florida. I was following along on the statistics page during the pre-show. I was receiving 1080p only from Alex Lindsay. Is this a function of everyone else's internet bandwidth or the way that the Zoom 1080 upgrade works? Or maybe it's more about my own bandwidth. Note he watched on speaker view when Alex was talking 1080p. When anyone else spoke, it dropped to 720p.
All right, go ahead, Dan.
Whoa, mouse was way over. Second monitor. Well, I mean, you have to have a 1080p camera, right?
Yeah, yeah. If people are using their internal camera, like say on their MacBook, it's
Like
720,
this, yeah.
it's a 720p, 720p camera. I have a feeling that it was just the people's cameras in the pre-show were set to 720. So especially if I'm switching to 10, mine is definitely 1080. But if I'm switching to 1080 and no one else is, chances are very high that there's something. It's just the cameras. It shouldn't matter. My bandwidth is not at home. You can always tell my background's blue is at home and gray at work. But if I'm at home, my bandwidth is just consumer Comcast. At work, I have 2 1 gig connections, and so I definitely have good bandwidth there. But home, I don't have nearly the same. So yeah, it shouldn't be my bandwidth. Next question.
Doug Ferguson's in from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and here on the panel, I believe, today. And he asked, how do you convert a client's live event budget into a virtual event?
I think a lot of times we talk about the fact, I mean, and some of our clients just get it. I mean, they just get that events are events. But I think a lot of times we just have to explain, like when you have a lot of people coming in, you need to manage them. Like there's, like if you had a live event, we talk about the fact that you'd have greeters and you'd have people managing registration and you'd have someone managing the cameras and you'd have someone managing, all those things it still takes capacity to do those things. And so a lot of times we're just educating them in that process. And what we know is that if you spend well into the physical budget, you'll end up with an event that you couldn't build in the physical world. I mean, we're seeing more and more of these events starting to pop out. Unfortunately, we're still kind of hobbled by physical event thinking. so like we're still trying to get over that of like, I just want to be like the physical event. I want all these things that I had in my physical event. But when we see clients, it's hard. Some of it's finding the right clients. And admittedly, what we're going to be spending more time on in the spring is really talking about those larger events and trying to interview people so that there's video of people talking about these larger, virtual events that are getting created. But I think that, part of it is no one's seeing good events. So there's this kind of problem we're having right now is that people don't see a lot of the great events because they're private events or they're not in their industry or, so they're mostly seeing really bad events with poor audio and poor video and, all the things that come with that. So I think it's hard to get people over it. But the problem is you don't spend enough money to make a good event, then it's not a good event and you don't understand why you would invest more in that. And I think that also, the COVID thing will probably last for a little while longer than everyone expected. I think everyone was hoping that it would be all done in April. So it's probably not going to be the case. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I'm just thinking also, this is going to rapidly become the new normal. It's taking time, just like every technology does. I remember when personal URLs came out, I was early enough, but not as early as a lot of my friends, and I just didn't get it. And there are people even today who really still haven't figured all that personal URLs and getting into the system. So it's going to happen. Now, the question is, do you take the time to bring older clients into the new world, or do you look for clients who have a predilection to be in the new world and want to work with them because they're the people who are going to lead coming out of this?
I mean, at the beginning of any disruption, it doesn't look like a disruption. I mean, I think that's the thing that I talk to clients about a lot is, we could see, many of us could see that people weren't going to read newspapers and magazines forever. You could see that it was going to drop off. You could see that it was no longer going to have the position that it had. But when we talked to them in 2001 and 2002, they were still very, very, vital and they were getting all this stuff, but, not anymore, and so the thing is that it might take time. And the question is are you going to throw the ball to where the receiver is? Throwing the ball, doing physical events as virtual events, like and trying to make them look like it, isn't even throwing the ball where the receiver was. It's throwing the ball where the receiver isn't. I mean, like is on the other side of the field now. Like you're throwing the ball over. Building virtual events. That are not constrained. by physical requirements like hybrid and so on and so forth, is throwing the ball to where the receiver is going to be. Like where we're going is, handfuls of hybrid events and lots of virtual events, and every once in a while a big physical event. But it's going to be a function of the it's just a function of where the world is going. It got accelerated by COVID, but it was always going that direction. So they have to decide whether they're building infrastructure for the future or whether they're going to try to just hang on to the past until it's no longer tenable. And that's just going to be up to the client. And again, I say this pretty often to clients, and if they and it sinks in over time, or it doesn't, and I find other clients. Go ahead, Jesse.
Another piece that I've noticed is, converting from live events to virtual. There's a bigger part of the pre-production is based on doing all these tech checks and remote testing and testing ahead of time. So when building out a budget, you really have to allocate a lot of people hours to doing that sort of stuff. And additionally, the panelists that are, used to working in person, working at physical events and going through sort of a standard flow of arrival and setup and all that stuff, they may need more education and coaching as far as how it's going to work online, and taking some time to put that into the budget, just to explain to the panelists, like, okay, you might be in a Zoom green room now, and then we're going to switch you over magically. You don't have to bring your stuff anywhere. You're just going to be shifted into a new space. And so orienting people towards what a virtual event feels like as a panelist.
But the reality is that, again, to get back to it, we're not going back. We've already, we worked with folks last year that were already talking about forcing companies to publish carbon impact for their events. That's coming. As soon as this turns back on, there's going to be environmental groups asking people to publish your carbon impact, your carbon footprint for your event. And if you don't think that that's going to kill big events, you haven't been watching what's happening. Like that, it's because everybody stopped. It was hard to stop a car that was moving. But they're going to make it hard to start it back up again. And that's where the momentum is. And so that's why it's so important for us to get good at what we're doing, because it's not coming back. Like, we're not going back to big physical events. Like, we'll try it for a while, but within 5 years, there'll be something we do every once in a while, but we're not going to do it all the time anymore.
I saw that article myself, and that was the very first thought I had was, oh crap, they are trying to kill large industry. And I was kind of wondering what some of the bigger event facilities actually thought of that. Well, what's that going to do to our price range for using those facilities? To me, obviously,
those facilities are incredible virtual studios for virtual events. They are built for it. They've got the infrastructure. They've got all the bits and pieces. And so using those as big broadcast facilities is a really great solution for a lot of folks.
Here come the drone racers.
Well, no, but I'm talking about just building studios so in our office, they're doing a virtual event. I can't talk about who it is, but they're doing a really big virtual event where big executives for big companies are coming in and talking. There's no audience. The audience is all online, but it's a 50 by 60, stage that's getting built out with LED walls and process and everything else. So, and it needs to be a big stage space, to do that. And so that's the future, I think, for a lot of these things, is building, you have multi-tenant broadcast facilities out of some of these big facilities. And it won't be that there's never any big events. It's just not going to be big events the way we used to, the way we used to see them. I just don't, I don't, and I think that turning them into broadcast facilities, or even parts of them into broadcast facilities, will make a lot of sense for. Now, we've been talking to facilities like Moscone for, a decade about that, of adding rooms that are really dedicated for broadcast. And that just didn't make sense when it was all going. But given the fact that it's going to start and stop and start and stop, and there's a lot of people that are trying to keep it stopped, I think that it's, there's a real opportunity for people doing virtual events. And yeah, absolutely, for folks doing physical events, they need to be shifting their skill set. But the skill set of being an event, I came out of events, a lot of our folks come out of events. that skill set is very valuable because you understand logistics, you understand run of show, you understand a lot of those bits and pieces, and so it all the skill sets come into play. It's just a new tool set and a new room. Next question.
Moving on to Daniel Goldstein, coming to us from Washington, D.C. For general PC Macs running show-critical functions, for example, main vMix or Unity server, do you want anti-malware software slowing down your computer? You also really don't want malware slowing down your computer itself. What's the recommended balance between security and performance?
So I've had to do a lot of AV management over the years as a cybersecurity professional. And one of the things that you can do is tune most anti-malware software so that it either ignores certain files such as vMix or Unity, or certain directories where that information is stored. And that's one of the safer ways that minimizes your impacts. You can also choose certain cybersecurity softwares. Usually these are enterprise only options that don't do disk scanning, but still block malware. And as such, they tend to have less impact on the endpoints.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Just to add to that, you can also get routers and software for certain routers that will block malware at that source rather than at the computer. So you can have less on your computer, but you can also, especially on a PC, you can tie everything down so it doesn't sideload or download anything else other than what you really want. And same thing with Mac, even though Macs will get malware if you sideload programs that are not approved on the Apple Store.
We rarely let the PCs do anything other than do what they're supposed to do. So we don't surf the web on them. We don't do anything like we don't on our side. Our Macs do all that work. The Macs, are out in the world. The PCs, like the Zoom room PCs that we have in the office, that's what they do. And they don't surf the web. They don't check email. They don't do anything other than do what they do. And that kind of keeps them focused in a way from some of that. The biggest thing is getting rid of the biggest reason that I don't use PCs often is the updates, the forced updates from Microsoft, like the thing that I probably hate the most. And I know that there's an enterprise solution or something that allows you to keep it fixed, but it's just from a cost, and so the thing is that the fact that Microsoft does that is why we don't put them into, I will avoid putting them into any production if I can avoid it, because you get updated and it breaks stuff, and that's a really troublesome thing for us. So so we keep our PCs have a very limited role, and they're not allowed to do anything other than what they're designed to do. That's usually how we measure that. Next question.
Alan Scott, New Brunswick, Canada, says, I set up the Bitfocus Companion app to use as a free controller. Is there a way to program changes to the value for a button? I'd like to change the value for one button with another one.
That's interesting. I don't know. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So to clarify, what you're saying is you want to have a button where you hit the button and then I'll change the other button to do something else.
Yeah, I think that's
how
I read it. Yep.
I know you can do it in the Stream Deck, but I don't know if you can do it on Companion. I bet you there is a way, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, we'll think on that a little bit. Next question.
Jan Landy of Las Vegas, and here in the panel today, in Bitfocus Companion, is there a list of all the string commands available?
Silence, as we figure out if there's a list. I don't know. Yeah, we don't know. Go ahead, Beju.
I think, Jan, are you asking about for Zoom OSC or in general? Like for Zoom OSC, Andy has shared the document which has a list of how the variables and how to formulate the commands. For a lot of the others, you can find the variables in the instances itself when you tap on the help button next to the instance in Companion.
No, I was actually asking about in Companion for Stream Deck, because what I wanted to do is turn on my lights and control my lights, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. So that's why I was seeing if there is some sort of a list of all the commands that you could use.
I don't know. Go ahead, Andy.
I would say that it's instance specific. So it depends on what you're trying, like the device that you're looking for. You're looking for the manufacturer of that device or the creator of the protocol that device uses on a menu inside of, it's called instances. So you want to search by manufacturer or search by the protocol you want to use as an instance, and then you'll get all the commands that are relevant to that, if that's the goal that you're trying to just learn about that lighting module specifically.
Oops, you're muted, Alex.
Next question.
Moving on to Dan Huber of Erie, Pennsylvania, who says, I noticed the new share video in Zoom is now available. Haven't had a chance to test. Has anyone tested this? And is the playback smoother for participants?
Has anyone played with that yet? Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, we beat on it pretty hard yesterday in the Zoom test kitchen. And what we found was that if you uncheck the optimize video, it will stutter on a 1920 by 1080 video. Compared to the original screen share, when you do click the optimize and share the file, it will give you a small window that gives you the player that the viewers don't see on the other side. So now you have control of play and rewind and fast forward. And it was significantly smoother. So if you use it, make sure you check optimize for video. And the other thing is, if you don't see that option available, you need to log out of Zoom and log back in. And then you'll see with the new update of 5.5, I believe it is, you got to log out and log back in to see it. Otherwise, you'll be like, where's that option at? It's not there. The trick is to log out and log back in. Thanks, Ed Willock, for figuring that one out.
John Idelson.
Yeah, Zoom Test Kitchen was great, but I think the best thing out of it is not having that player. So lots of people were sharing screens and you saw the player come up and down. So it's really improved some of our, excuse me, faculty presentations. So I'm glad they did it.
Yeah, that's great. Next question.
And Jan Landy's back at the top of the voting thing with 9 votes. I'm using a Sony ZV-1 camera to stream my video. There are times I'd like to change my camera settings, for example, autofocus, defocus, brightness, and so forth. The question, does anyone know if there's a solution, either software or hardware, to remote control the settings of that particular camera? For example, could he do it with Stream Deck?
So with most cameras, you have to look at that one. I'm not as familiar with that one. They may have a Lank controller. So there might be a Lank input. You will not be able to do as much control as you're asking for there. You would be able to control zoom and focus. Those are the main things that you can control with Lank. But that is one way to kind of do some basic controls. And those are, you can get hardware Lank controllers. It looks like a headphone jack that goes into the camera, and I'll say Lank on it if it has it. So a lot of Sonys do. And that's how we've used it for little camcorders to control their zoom and focus, but the color and everything else, I don't think you're going to have that access. Go ahead, Beju.
I believe the ZV-1 is their entry-level mirrorless camera for vlogging.
Okay.
Sony, I believe, has imaging edge control app for the Mac and PC as well as on mobile. I'm not sure if it's supported for this specific camera, but I have used it with my A6400. It does give you pretty decent controls, but it is a bit laggy. So you might not do it in live, but it does give you control over USB from your Mac or PC and via Bluetooth from your phone as well. You need to check whether that specific camera has that available.
It just seems, you see, they have this thing, which is, you can control the record, and it should be able to control the autofocus. Because sometimes when I move, it'll take me out of focus, and I don't like that. So I want to shut it off. But there are times when I need it. And as well, of course, is the aperture setting. I would love to be able to control that.
Yeah. Sony. We've wrestled with Sony for control of their cameras for 2 decades. So they're not as open-minded about allowing people to get access to the cameras. That's really the problem, is that, and again, this gets back to why we were talking about this in the pre-show, that why I use so much Blackmagic stuff is everything's opened and I can get a hold of it. I can get a hold of those things because they created an open architecture to run it, and the other camera manufacturers have not, and that it's always a wrestle with Canon or Sony or all the Panasonic to get a hold of the control of the cameras is a constant source of upset. Next question.
Can I ask one thing before we go on? And that's what you mentioned, the Blackmagic. What would be the least Blackmagic camera, the lowest entry level that I would be able to do what I want to do?
You could do it with both the micro cinema, or not, sorry, the micro studio or the 4K studio. The 4K, I'm sorry, the 4K, whatever they call it, 4K pocket cam, the newest one, this
Pocket Cinema Camera 4K.
Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, what he said. So, if and then it's just a matter of lens choices. That's a micro four thirds. The 6K is a Canon mount. So if you have Canon cameras, it's nice to have a bunch of lenses that you can already use. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to mention it depends a little bit on which ATEM unit you have, because the ATEM Mini has only HDMI.
Well, you have you now have, they have converters now, so the bidirectional converters, and so if you mix match where you get an SDI Blackmagic camera with a HDMI Blackmagic camera, you can get a converter that will go back and forth between those and still talk and shade those cameras, and then you'll have all the control that you want. I mean,
right.
Most
I
of
think
the control you want.
It's the Studio and the Ursa cameras, I think, are SDI, and the Pocket Cinema cameras use HDMI.
So you just need a converter to get from one to the next. Next question.
Our friend Talak Lopez Waterman is in with a question specifically for Nick Justitian. What is he using to key? Is it right in the Unreal Engine, ATEM, or something else? And he notes it looks pretty awesome, and I agree.
Thanks. It's a function inside Unreal. So an Unreal these days actually has a number of different ways of keying, and I'm actually using the oldest and simplest and quick and dirty. So I guess that'll have to be another video sometime. But
absolutely.
But there is just a node it's just a function called MF chroma key, and you put it in between the video input and the 2D card that is me, and then you have a key.
Next question.
Andrew Flowerdew of Warwick, I think that's in Rhode Island, but it's not specified. Dumb question, what's an ATEM Mini and what does it do? There are no dumb questions. I love it when people ask basic things because we're bringing everybody along.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
ATEM Mini is a very good basic video switcher that has 4 inputs and 2 outputs, one through USB-C and one through HDMI. We use it because it's fairly inexpensive, has a really good key, and Alex recommended it. So at least that's why I picked it.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it really kind of revolutionized things back at the beginning of the pandemic, because they came out with this small 4-input switcher that had a lot of capability and pretty amazing quality. And it was $299, I think. And then they came out with 2 more versions. The next one up had a few more capabilities. That's the Mini Pro, as I think Guy is showing us. And then they came out with even another one, which is the ATEM ISO, which allows you to record ISO cameras that are attached to it and works with the software DaVinci Resolve, so that you can take the files directly from the Mini Pro ISO and put them into that NLE system and cut or correct a show after you do it. The bang for buck on the ATEM Mini line has been astonishing, and it's really put switchers into the hands of a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford them.
Yeah, it's been disruptive, I guess is what I think the safest way to say it is really a disruptive solution, that suddenly you can, if you're doing a basic presentation, you can be cutting shows. I think that my ability in some of my meetings, to be able to jump between things is pretty, it just changes the way you can, the fluidity. This whole let me share my screen, or, let me do this, or, let me do that. It's very clunky. And so when you can pull all that stuff together and jump between stuff, it makes a big difference. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say that at the time it came out, I was using a small little box from Magwell that would convert an HDMI input into USB 3 so that I could capture any HDMI camera into the computer. And that one unit, one HDMI input to the computer, was the same price as the ATEM Mini. And the ATEM Mini has 4 HDMI inputs that you can switch between and crossfade and wipe across. And I mean, it's a little mini broadcast studio that then plugs into the computer as a USB camera source. So to the camera, yeah, look at that. It's $300. It's the same price as the ATEM Mini. And the only thing it does is convert one HDMI output into a USB. So the ATEM Mini does that, but it has 3 more inputs than that. So there's a total of 4 HDMI inputs plus 2 audio inputs. There's mixed reviews on the value of those little 1/8-inch audio inputs, but there are separate.
They're there. They're there.
And you can actually overlay as many, like you could have 3 video sources being piped into your computer as a single USB video source, and every conferencing software, Teams, Zoom, Skype, all recognize it just as, oh, you have a webcam. And so you basically get an instant television studio for this little $300 box.
Plus, we shouldn't forget the keyer is the keyer from the big ones and is remarkably good for the price.
That's the key.
I'm having trouble with my little, I was going to try to show you mine, but for some reason, it's not the switcher itself. It's the iPhone interface is not working very well. So we'll go back to it. But yeah, it's an incredible little box. And we use them a lot, even just for controllers, just raw controllers that we can access them anywhere in the world through if we put them on a VPN. And so we can make this a controller for a camera and then be shading the camera and changing all its settings from 3,000 miles away. Or I think the last one we did 8,000 miles away. So we literally had it open and we're redoing the camera and setting it and everything else from anywhere in the world because we have this little connector. And there's other things we could have done it with, but for $300, it's amazing. Go ahead, Dan, and then Nick.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that I have a lot of techie teachers, and I know this is talking about college, but I'd like to add that to some of, because I know some of them that bring in their Wacom tablet or they'll bring their iPad in, and they got to use my laptop, HDMI coming out of the podium and all that, and then switch. And I think that they could just, unplug the HDMI from our monitor, plug it into the ATEM, put their devices in there, and then go back into the monitor. But how long does it take to boot that ATEM? And do you think they could do that in the time of a classroom start? Because that would be much simpler switching for them.
You go, TJ.
Takes about half a second for the ATEM to boot up once you plug it in.
I'm going to get one and test it.
Pretty straightforward. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's all its internal software is embedded. It's like turning on a calculator, really, and it's ready to go. So yeah, I would highly recommend. I wish if we were teaching in classrooms these days, I would recommend one on every teacher desk, so that, because one of the banes of our physical classrooms is always different teachers coming in with different laptops, and they all have different HDMI connectors and that sort of thing. And it seems like every time you step in the room, you don't know if the workstation there is going to be connected to the right projectors in the right way. Whereas, having an ATEM Mini would just make that so simple. The thing I was having my hand up for was, just pointing out that Ethernet input, and for the higher level ATEMs, the ISO and the Pro, you can stream from that that output, right? So you could, without a computer, you could plug in an HDMI camera. You could use your computer for a video source, but connecting that ATEM to the internet, you can now stream directly to any number of YouTube style services. I imagine Twitch and such. And the other thing that affords is external control, right? So if you do have a large event, I used it quite a few times for, larger presentation events, and you can have multiple people connected to that one ATEM to control it. So you could have someone doing the sound mix, and they're using software on their computer to control the one ATEM unit, and yet someone else is controlling the video switching functions with their own computer over that Ethernet connection, and yet another person could be, adjusting the camera, exposures and colors and things like that. So,
and this is not ATEM when you're talking about the larger ones as well. In a bind, we had to switch 4 rooms with a constellation. And so we just didn't have, they wanted to split it up, and that's all we had there. And so literally we used one ME for each room, and 4 different people were logged into that. And we just made sure it was clear. Don't go to the other ME. You can't, but they're all sharing the same switcher. The switcher is all putting out 4 different shows that they're cutting, from it. So it's a very, very flexible, and because it's an open architecture, people can write code to it. This gets back into what we were talking about earlier. Is like, we built an Arduino controller. We had a guest that wanted to have a button. They said, I want a button in front of me. If I hit the button, I want to go to a slate and mute. If we're in the middle of something and I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to go to broadcast, I just want to hit a button. So we built this little Arduino controller and printed a little button and everything else. And we put it right on their desk with their logo and everything else, and it made it look really pretty. and all I had to do is hit it, and it just told it would just tell the ATEM, cut to the slate, audio follows video, boom, you're out, and it would allow them to mute and put up a slate and it made them feel better. They never used it, but it was great function. It was just part of the project. Go ahead, John, and then Sky.
The other thing that's nice about it is that we're doing things where we're challenged by access to power, and it will run off batteries for a real long time. It's really low battery draw. So we had a system with Mac computer, the ATEM, and we were using iPhones and one HDMI camera. Didn't need power for a day because it really didn't.
As a thought process, I'm building a little kit. I'm always trying to build these small kits to go out. And my thing is always that I generally used to send 2 people out all the time. You always have a primary and backup person too. Anyway, the idea is always 2 backpacks, 2 1510s. These are Pelican cases. And I think that we're getting to the point with I can light, get pretty close to lighting. The lighting is still a little tricky, but I can do basic lighting, have 3 cameras, switcher, audio, everything for 3 or 4 people to talk to each other, and I can put it all in 2 1510s and 2 backpacks, which is kind of amazing. That everything's miniaturized, and I can shade the cameras and control them and all the other stuff as well. It's the cost of that used to be very high. Sky.
Well, the 35-foot production truck in a suitcase, that's pretty amazing.
It's not. I want to make sure. I don't want to do hyperbole there.
Good point.
It's not. I work in trucks.
Good
But
point.
what I'm putting into a backpack and into 1510s is not a truck. Like a truck is a whole world of difference between what's, and I only say that because a lot of times we get into this, like, I think we always want to know that when we say things like that, the problem is that people who work in trucks stop listening to us. Like, literally one comment like that.
Yeah.
And they're going to go, you have no idea what you're talking about. And so that's all. You just want to be careful of hyperbole when we talk about what we're creating. Anyway, it's great. It's amazing. It's disruptive. It's just not a truck. Anyway, go ahead, Scott.
And I have worked in trucks, and you are absolutely right. So you're correct for calling me out on that. The point that I was going to make is with regards to the Nick, the presets that you do want to keep with the ATEM Mini or not Nick, but whoever was talking about that. Yes, you can plug it in. Yes, you can turn it on, but prove me wrong, but it's kind of a dumb box. It doesn't keep its presets. You have to go physically restore your presets.
No, you can save startup state. Yeah. So with the software,
good to know.
You can set it up, and then you can save its current state as what it would use when it starts up. So, and that includes all of the, overlay effects and keys and all of that sort of thing is included in that. The only thing that's not included, by the way, is any media. So for the ATEM Minis, if you've uploaded some like JPEGs or cards, lower thirds, those would need to be re-uploaded by the software.
Next question.
Thank you.
And we're going to move pretty quickly now because we're running out of time.
Eddie Scott's in next from Mission Viejo, California. Can an attendee in a webinar be made co-host, thinking about managing panelists and views for a non-technical host?
Absolutely. We do that every day. So everyone here starts as an attendee, and then some of them get brought in as a panelist, and then the panelists get turned into either co-hosts, and in this case, hosts. So yeah, you can the host can always keep on changing it. You can always change the state of the people below you. So
I wonder, Alex, if he's thinking about taking somebody straight from attendee, leaving them as an attendee, but making them a co-host in that function. They have to become panelists before they can become co-hosts, right?
Yeah, you can't be a co-host as an attendee, though.
Yeah, I think that may be what he was.
But that's the question. You can't do that. Yeah. Next question.
Ryan Z. Slater's back from London with, if you had the budget to upgrade one thing for live Zoom theater, what would it be? Microphones for actors, better webcams, HD Zoom account, something else?
Good, Sky.
Definitely microphones and good internet, because I've got people that are doing things, and visually I can see them, but audibly, if you can't hear them, you got nothing.
Go ahead, Andy.
Controversial opinion, media server. People are, if you work on Zoom all day and then you go and your entertainment looks the same, I think that it hits less effectively. I think that when you bring in that design element and focus on the creative side, I think you'll be successful. And you can really tune a lot with the equipment that you do have with the people who are there after just good mastery and understanding that, and supplementing who needs supplementing with the camera and things like that, and being strategic.
Yeah, mine is always the same. As I was, make sure they have good internet, then make sure they have good audio, then make sure they have good lighting, then they make sure that they have good a good camera. But somewhere in there to talk to where Andy's talking about is make sure that you have something that's going to bring that elevate it a little bit, from that next step. Yeah, absolutely. But the thing we have to realize is like just listen to bad audio, and people won't listen to it for very long, and they won't take it very seriously if it's roomy and so on and so forth. Next question. We're gonna keep moving.
James Babbitt is in next from San Diego. Is there an advantage to having people register for a Zoom meeting in advance and then sending them a meeting ID and password versus just emailing the group and including the ID and password to join a Zoom meeting?
I mean, the big advantage is you can get a hold of them again. You can say, hey, it's coming. I mean, the little letter that you get out every day would be very hard for me to send out to make sure everybody knew what was happening if they didn't register. So registration, obviously some people want to register for leads or whatever that they want to do, but giving, and from a security perspective, forcing registration and forcing you to be signed into Zoom definitely greatly reduces the amount of bad weather that you might get. Go ahead, Doug.
Also, we discovered by trial and error that if your meeting has a breakout room and you make them register, you can preload the breakout rooms. So let's say that you have certain people that you want to go in certain breakout rooms, you can preload that.
Yeah,
you can only do that if they're registered. But
the other thing is, pet peeve is that you can't allow them to wander. What I want is to create the rooms and then let people come in and go wherever they want to go, and you can't do that I know of. So when you go in, you have to create a preset rooms. You have to pre-assign people to it. I didn't see anywhere where you could it was asking you to pre-assign them. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, Grant was talking about in one of the pre-shows, it was some kind of bit.ly thing where instead of sending out the meeting ID, he sends out the bit.ly link. That way, if something happens and somebody needs to shift accounts or something needs to happen at the last minute, you have that way of just going into a backend and changing that meeting ID there without having to alert everybody again. So there's two thoughts to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to do that with this because I've gotten into a couple weird situations with this meeting that I have conflicts and so on and so forth. So as the website goes up, we're going to have a place that everyone goes to go there and not have to get it from here, but we're not quite there yet. Next question.
Michael Patrick of Chicago asks, I'm looking for a camera to broadcast concerts and theatrical events. Any recommendations for a budget-friendly camera that would work in that lighting environment and look good? Thanks for the great feedback.
Go ahead, Bill.
So this immediately caused me to think, stop thinking about just one camera in the back, proscenium capture that thing. That is very hard to do. People can do that, but this is a different era. Rather than setting one camera in the back and putting an incredibly long lens and trying to get your wide shots, your medium, and your close-ups all from that one thing, this is an era where multicam is really easy. So the idea of putting cameras closer and separating that out from one camera to more small cameras so that you can get more intimate crossing shots of a couple in an embrace if that's part of the play, and think differently. It's no longer just one eye at the back of the room is what a video of a play is.
I would rather get an ATEM Mini Pro and a bunch of GoPros than get one Sony A7S to put in the back. I would definitely pick smaller, less expensive cameras with a switcher to get around because it's really hard to watch a single camera anymore. Yeah, John.
I was going to say, if you wanted to try something a little bit different and go with a software switcher of some sort, you could get a handful of Brios and use those. They wouldn't work with an ATEM because they use a USB-C, but they would definitely be in the budgeter side and could handle low lighting, I think, pretty well.
I'd be tempted to use a GoPro only because over that for the same price because it's easier to mount. And I think that would be the only thing that I would say there. Go ahead, TJ.
My son just set up a similar system for a theater in town here, and they went with a bunch of the smaller Blackmagic pocket, not the pocket cinemas, but the little small micro four thirds ones with a ATEM switcher behind.
Yeah, I would, if I got to the point where I was using the micro studios, I would go to the 4K Blackmagic cameras at that point. Only because you're gonna have much better low light. The low light on the 4Ks and definitely on the 6Ks is much better for concerts. Next question.
Moving on to Shane McNamara of Des Moines, Iowa. Alex, what's the model of your preferred label maker, and what's the difference between a regular and a pro model? I know you have mentioned it on the show before, but I can't remember the exact model or which episode, or in which episode you spoke about it.
The P-Touch. So this is the P-Touch Cube Plus. This is by far my favorite label maker. Now, I have a Brady label maker that's really expensive and will print on metal and do other things like that. So I like that one as well for certain things. But this P-Touch, the big thing is that it get the Pro because you have much more options for the kind of tape you can put in it. So that's the big thing. And then the other thing is that you can go over Bluetooth with your phone and so I sit there with my phone just printing out labels as I work, but you can also plug it into your computer, and the app actually gives you more tools on the Mac or PC. I've had so many label makers. My first label maker I got from my grandfather, and it was the one that has a little circular thing, and you push it and punch it. I can't remember what they're called, but so I've been labeling Dymo. I've been labeling stuff for a long time. I'm obsessed with labeling. And so I hate handwriting. Like anybody who works with me will tell you that like if you handwrite anything on it, chances are I'm going to rip it all off and replace it with a print. I just find it very unprofessional. So I hate handwriting. I hate the look of that. Anyway, so I would highly recommend that. We're gonna keep moving on. I'm sorry, we're running out of time. Next question.
I'm just saying, get one with a keyword too, and you don't even have to mess with it.
I wouldn't bother. Anyway, next question.
Okay, moving on. Doug Ferguson's up next, and he's is using VirtualHere for USB remote control. It would work at first, then stop working. Would there be a network problem causing this, or maybe something else?
I'm gonna guess network. I don't know it well enough, but I'm going to guess some kind of network issue or some kind of handshake issue for it. But I don't know it. I don't know it. So does anyone else use that software? Sorry, we don't have a good answer on that one. All right, I'll do some more research on it. Next question.
Dan Huber of Erie, what's your preferred way to extend HDMI, Cat6, fiber, or something else?
Fiber. And that's my preferred, like by far. But anything I want to extend, I tend to extend with fiber. If you can definitely do it with USB, or not USB, but Cat5. You have Cat5 amplifiers. Geffen makes some that we've used in the past, and you get USB ones, and they can go a solid 300 feet. The fiber is a couple miles. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, exactly. Fiber can go forever. But it might be overkill in terms of cost if you're just trying to go 50 or 100 feet. And at that range, SDI is a really inexpensive approach because you can have an SDI converter on either end. The cables are just BNC terminated. And so at shorter extensions under a couple hundred feet, SDI is a pretty valid approach and a little bit less expensive than fiber.
And it's anytime you start thinking you're going to use a lot of SDI, all I'll say is that you want to learn how to terminate it because it's a lot cheaper. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if it's pretty short, like this one that I got here is 100 feet, which is, it says 30 meters, but this is about a $79 fiber cable. Mm-hmm. And the way that we're using it is it's fast, because if you go to SDI to HDMI converter on both ends, you're going to hit a couple frames of latency. So it just depends on how long you want to go and how much you want to spend and how delicate it can be, because this one was $169.
Yep. Next question. That's good. That's a good one. Yeah, the fiber, the HDMI to fiber is a great way to get a certain length out if you're not trying to extend it too far. Next question.
Next up, TJ Asher, Minneapolis in the panel. Is there a setting in Zoom to force all people to have their mics muted when they come into a meeting or webinar? I sometimes notice folks join meetings with live mics and don't realize it.
That is a preference. It should be a preference. It's generally a preference in to start off muted. I don't know how people enter here unmuted, but it is a I have the preference on, which says panelists and attendees start with their mics off, and that's in the web settings. But somehow I don't think that it's 100% reliable. Go ahead, John.
I've noticed when I've joined this panel with or other Zoom meetings you have, Alex, from my iPhone, that it unmutes automatically, and that's a setting in the iPhone.
No, got it. Outstanding. Next question.
Brian Stockton of Des Moines, Iowa says, I'm trying to transition from OBS software-based to an ATEM Mini Pro hardware-based. I seldom use more than one camera, so what I find I'm missing are computer program inputs. I have heard mention of using a Mac Mini or other PC as an input. Is that how this problem is typically solved?
Yeah, it's just HDMI out from your computer. In the Mac, the especially input 1 on the ATEM Mini is particularly flexible for computer inputs, but you can absolutely have them just HDMI out, or however you go to your monitor, and then plug it into the Mini. Like I've got a bunch of Minis in my office set, and I have HDMI going into the Mini, and then I have a USB-C to HDMI going into a 4-way splitter from Monoprice. That then I have a 4-up, so I have all the Minis that I can see there, and I can isolate any of them. So I still see them, but they're going into the ATEM as well, and that makes it a little easier to manage them. Now, next question.
Craig Hibbert, is it possible to use an iPhone as an input to an ATEM Mini? Yes, it is. There's mine.
Yep, there you go. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I use my over-the-shoulder camera with just an HDMI converter out from the iPhone, and it works really well.
Yeah, one thing that I'm still playing with. Sky had me thinking about cooking, so I've been playing with building this little cooking rig with all phones. And but one thing to think about is you can use an ATEM, or you can use a Apple TV and AirPlay from the phone to the Apple TV, and so then you have a wireless, phone, that can output. Go ahead, Sky.
I again also use the Filmic Pro rather than the standard camera, because that way you get a nice clean signal, and I just discovered the zoom function.
Oh yeah. Well, and the other thing with Filmic Pro is you can control the camera from another iOS device. So you can sit there and control cameras and play with their zoom and everything else. And so it's quite a little rig.
Which is great for the overhead cam, because that way you can zoom in and out. You can't tilt yet, but it's happening.
Yeah. Next question.
And our last question from the generals comes from Blue Nelnick from Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. Is there a key or is there a function for key on-off buttons to just use the key you've set in the control software? From what I can tell, it defaults to chroma.
Yeah, I don't know of ways to have more fine control on the ATEM. You'd have to go into the software. I don't think that there's any other way to do that I know of, unless someone else does. Yeah.
I've got one more last minute.
I was just going to say that there might be a way to save that as a macro. So you could record a macro and set up, all the methods and dial in those settings. And then
can you fire macros from, but you can't fire macros from, I read that as being able to do it from the Mini itself.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, but I don't think so. Next question.
And the last one now, I believe, comes from Andreas Molina in Barcelona, Spain. Hi, can you talk of which are the differences between a live streaming service, a Dacast Brightcove IBM video teaming and streaming and so forth, and a CDN? What do you recommend for 3 to 4 services a month with around 1,000 viewers and a 2-hour-long webcast?
It depends on how much control you want to have. In general, if you're doing that kind of thing, I would strongly recommend looking at Vimeo, for that type of solution. If you don't want to pay too much money and you want it to just work, it's a CDN and a streaming service. But I think that it's the easiest one to just kind of roll up and have it appear without having to click through. So you don't pay anything if you use YouTube or something like that, but people can click through to your YouTube channel. And if you're fine with that, that's fine. But if you want to have a customized experience where it's just a video, once you pay for the pro version of Vimeo, you're going to end up with all of those things up there, and you have kind of unlimited streaming. There's a lot of other services that do it. They're just the most, they've got it the most dialed in, I think. Go ahead, Baishu.
Another alternative for this would be Boxcast. They have a really nice service. It's pretty affordable. It's competitive to Vimeo. They offer a white label product, and they also offer restreaming inside it as well. So you can have a service, record it, you can play it out later if you want. You can do password protection if you need it as well. And you can add on, and they are really, really, a lot of churches and a lot of services are using it. So it's a pretty nice service to try out.
Yeah, the main advantage of Vimeo is mostly that it scales. Like if you want to build, if you start going down that path, I don't think that any of the other ones do that as well right now, from what we've seen anyway. The one I would definitely not use is IBM's video streaming. That's just Ustream, and they haven't updated it at all. They bought Ustream and then they made it a service, and it's just totally horrible. Go ahead, Beju.
Yeah, one thing is that Boxcast is actually built on AWS, so that way you get the advantage of using AWS's infrastructure. But it's a very nice, clean, simple, and very easy to manage interface for a non-technical user. That's the nice thing with it.
With a little work, you can do it all inside of AWS, where you have, like we send out links. We just send a link out to somebody, and then they just plug it in, and then we run the whole thing from there. So with a little bit of front end or a little help with someone, you can build an interface that you could do all through AWS that would be relatively inexpensive for you to make work. So those are other things. I don't know. I'd have to look at like 1,000 viewers when that would become more expensive than Vimeo, because Vimeo gives you kind of unlimited minutes. So I have to look at the resolution of when that would turn a corner. All right, we're going to now go into education. If you are an educator, please raise your hand if you haven't already. And we've got a couple of folks with their hands up here. As we all jump in trying to. And if you have education questions, you can go ahead and just ask them. You don't have to tag them. If you do have questions for the Zoom OSC, then make sure to say second hour. I know it's third hour, but Okay. Bringing everybody on here. And Bill, I'm going to step away for just a second. Go ahead and do mic checks real quick. And
Sure.
I'll be right back.
And it's good to see all of our education friends back in this morning. For the two of you, well, I know Daniel. Daniel's here probably for the Zoom C stuff, but Andrew Flowerdew as well. If you want to join the education part, which is this hour, before we go to the Zoom OSC part, which is second hour, you have to turn your video on to get in. And right now we're going to start with Steve Cotton and then go to Emily. So Steve, time for your mic check. Good morning.
All right. Good morning from the West Coast. And the sun is just creeping over the hill right now, and it looks terrific. And I'll be speaking about this level. Looks like I'm a little down.
Yeah, just a little bit. Come up a touch.
I'll just bring it up just a little bit. All right. And how's that? We'll be talking about this level now, and talking about this space.
It was pretty close to right. I think you're pretty close to where you averaged low and high, and I think you're about right. Let's move on to Emily. Good morning, Emily. Nice to see you as always.
Good morning. Nice to see you as well. I was hearing an echo, but I don't know if that's just me. It is chilly out here, but not as chilly as it has been. We might get snow, we may not. We're going to get clipped, may not. It's kind of one of those winters.
Well, regardless of what the weather's like, your audio level is perfect. So let's move on to Chris Comfort and then Aaron after that. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks.
Chris Clark. I'm sorry, I said Chris Comfort. That was just a reaction. Chris Comfort isn't in the panel today.
That's my stage name.
Chris comes in a lot, but we're happy to see you, Chris Clark.
Good morning. Good morning. Let me get my audio settings up as I speak and give a slight weather report. In Arizona at this time of year, the weather report is always the same. It's the same every day, and it's pretty darn nice, but I don't want to rub that into people who are in less.
Yeah, Arizona in the winter, it has a reputation.
Yeah.
Well,
how's that look for levels?
I think you're doing fine.
Thanks,
we're going to move on to Aaron Graham and then Tony Mobley. Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, good morning from Boston, where it is very chilly with about 18 inches of snow on the ground. And like Emily said, we might get more. So I hope we don't.
You sound perfect. So you're in great shape. We're moving to Tony Mobley and then Andrew Flowerdew after that. Whoops.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tony.
Hello, everyone. Good day. Greetings from West Georgia, west of Atlanta. How is everybody doing today?
We are doing fine, and I think your level is coming in just fine. So we're going to move on to Andrew Flowerdew. I don't know if you've been here before. If not, welcome to the panel.
Thanks very much. I'm from the Midlands in the UK. It's Warwick in Warwickshire. And I don't know whether my level's all right, but
yeah, they're looking pretty decent. I think you're fine. All right.
Super.
And so I'm not seeing any video from Daniel, so I think I'm gonna that and Andy Niedermeyer. I'm also not seeing video there. So I think unless you come on video in the next couple of seconds, we're gonna push you back to attendees for this. Roscoe, did you have a question?
Yeah, I didn't. I'm just checking my mic. And Andrew, real quick, we do tend to mute. We like to use our mute, between just as a so that we don't interfere.
Keeps the background noise low and the signal high. Yeah, you sound great. So we're in good shape there. All right, I'm gonna go ahead.
And adding location in your name is something that's part of the model here.
One other quick thing is Chad did put the Discord link in. So Andrew, if you're not familiar with Discord, it's comes out to the gaming world, but it's the way we communicate via text between meetings. So you might want to go ahead and click on that link that's in Mukana and register for that.
Yeah, the Discord is an exciting place. That's where this conversation that is office hours online on the web goes on literally 24/7. And it's fun. There's about 1,000 people. I think, are we over 1,000 now, Alex?
Yeah, we're over 1,000.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I'm not a real numbers person, so I don't really. Looks like I'm frozen. Hold on. Am I frozen for you?
Yes, you are.
Interesting.
Quality over quantity, just like in education.
He's going to reboot a little bit, and then we can start.
We can start without him.
Well, I suppose we could. Does one of our educators have anything that's happened in the last week or so that has been particularly interesting that you were saying, when I go on office hours, I have to bring up this subject? Now, Alex is back, although you are very red.
It's pre-correction. I lost my correction there. So anyway, so I guess the question while I'm fixing my camera is what's happening? What's anything new that is showing up as things that are working or not working? No, it's just more of the same. Go ahead, Chris.
In Tempe, Arizona, the high school district just announced that they're planning to bring back 100%, bring back live instruction in the high schools as of the 15th of March. And there will still be an option for students and their families to select to continue virtual tuning in to classes. I'm not sure, it wasn't elaborated as to whether that's going to be, from the teacher's point of view, it's going to be a hybrid model where both face-to-face students and students online are attempting to be served by the same teacher at the same time, or some other arrangement. That wasn't clear. And there's of course doubt about whether the world will really be ready and safe for more intense face-to-face instruction and interaction among the students. So that's the latest. It's got quotation marks around it saying conditions permitting. It's hard to predict anything, especially the future. So, but that's the latest from Tempe, Arizona.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, we've started to make use of exam.net to do remote access exams and tests, and they seem to be going quite good. You can do it, they can write on paper, they can then scan a QR code and take a photo of that, go straight to exam, and then the teachers have them straight there at the end of the exam for it to be marked. If they press escape and come out of the exam, there's a warning goes to the teacher or the invigilator, and they have to have an explanation of what they've done. So it's been really quite interesting and very useful.
Go ahead, Emily.
The very exciting, with the biggest sarcasm attached, is that the AP has decided to go ahead with full-length exams this year, despite the fact that the kids weren't in school full-time this year. And they're offering it in 3 versions. One version is in school, in person, take the test. The other window is some of the tests will be offered with paper and pencil, and some will be offered online. And then there's a full online version for the kids who are staying remote. But it looks like it's up to the districts to choose which window they want to use. And I'm not sure, that's unclear if they can choose like multiple, like, oh, we want the remote and we want the full in person. But the fact remains that none of our kids had a full school year this year with their teachers. And for AP, it's very intensive. And yet, College Board, I guess, wants their money is what it comes down to. So full exams.
I think it'll be interesting. I think that a lot of these are, I think the public education system is in a really delicate position right now. That they, I can just tell you from working in Silicon Valley, I've never seen so much money looking at education ever. Like they just thought that K through 12 was not something that was on the table. And they now definitely think it is. And so so there's just this enormous machine that's like turning up and doing things like putting out a bunch of tests where a bunch of students fail, or do badly on, is going to upset a lot of parents. It's, and that, it's a crack. It's not the final thing that has happened, but a lot of parents being upset about it is generally the beginning of a lot of bad things. And I think that it's because I don't care. My son has had a lot of trouble. Like he's now we put him in a pod, like in one of those cohorts or pods or whatever, because he just wasn't succeeding at home. And he's going to have, he'll have a hard time testing, this year. He just, just isn't as caught up. And my wife is very, the difference between my wife, graduated top of her class, went to Harvard, all that stuff. I don't do any of those things. I just don't care. About my numbers or grades or pieces of paper. And so, she's very upset about the whole thing, about where he's at and everything else. I'm just like, he had a year, it's just like, it's a side, he'll be fine in the grand scheme of things. And, but I know that parents that are upset about that, will be, again, it just puts it in the back of their head where they're not happy, and that creates, when something else shows up, like, oh, this could be better, they're not as committed as they were before to, public education. And I think that that's going to be the challenge that the schools are going to have as they go in, because the technology is moving very fast right now, and the money going into that speed is just funneling massively right now. A lot of the stuff is under, it's going to surface in this fall and the next fall. It's not going to, right now it's just people building infrastructure. So it's an interesting times. Go ahead, Aaron, and then Andrew, and then Nick, and then back to Emily. And Dave, you got to put that hand down. It breaks our whole system. Sorry, you got to use your physical hand. We can't move our windows around. Go ahead, Jay, real quick, but don't use the digital hands. It breaks what we can do on our end.
No problem. I'm moving on to a slightly different subject. So if people with hands up,
hold that. We basically just the subject drive. Yeah. We'll come back to you. Okay, go ahead, Aaron, and then Nick, and then Andrew and Emily. I don't know if that was the same order, but we'll go with that one. All right, go ahead, Aaron.
So I said 2 really cute short stories. One is that I've been popping into breakout rooms more recently, and some of my more tech savvy students have been doing their own versions of mic checks. Nice. And it's kind of funny to watch because they'll have their headsets or they'll have their mics, and they're like, oh, you got to be a little quieter. Can you turn down your volume? And I'm like, where have I heard this before?
Yeah, exactly.
So that was really cute. But then also something me and a coworker started was book buddies with our first graders who are also remote. And the fact that these first graders come in with the third graders, and we learn and we read books together, and we've been doing mindfulness activities and go noodle activities where they're bouncing around. And it's just so cute to see like how much they're integrating the tech with what they're learning. They're holding books up to the screen. It's been a pretty big success for me. So I'm kind of hoping that this continues, but just some of the things I've brought from office hours to my classroom.
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah, and it's I think that people underestimate the power of having good audio. that you can that it becomes less exhausting when you have full range audio that sounds good. It just is much easier to listen to for a long period of time than when you I think especially for students that are that would be the first thing that I got every student and every teacher would be a headset mic, just to get them to a point where we can all hear each other clearly would be a huge step forward. Nick, great work, Aaron.
Yeah, I was listening to some of the chat about the standardized tests, and particularly at the tail end of that K through 12, it is useful to go ahead and encourage families to take a look at what their next steps of interest are. I teach at a really large university on the East Coast, and we don't care about the College Board tests anymore. I mean, it's just not, it used to be absolutely positively required. We wouldn't even, your application was not complete, let alone considered, until you had those College Board tests. And now it's just, it's completely optional. And, much like getting massive conventions together, I don't see a reason to go back to them. They for programs, particularly the ones that I taught in or teach in, it wasn't a primary indicator, honestly. So that'll be interesting. And so I hope families don't sweat it when those, big final exams are coming up. And the other thing that I will say in terms of experience through all of this is that I am floored and I love the savvy of the students. My daughter is homeschooled. She was homeschooled for a few years before all of this started, this COVID thing started. And now what's interesting is she has more connection with her public school friends than she had pre-COVID. And my wife gauges the success of her lessons by how quickly my daughter picks up her phone and takes a photo of it and sends it to her friends and starts chatting. And like, so they have these sidebar conversations going on outside of her classes. And so she has one really best friend that's in public school, and they're connected constantly. And so she has sat in on some of his classes, and they're commenting. She's just sitting and watching just for the fun of it, not that she's actually ahead of the classes that are in the schools. And so I find that interesting. And for what it's worth, my son is in college and is on the other side of my green screen curtain. And when he's taking his college classes, he's in the prescribed Zoom meeting or BB Learn or whatever it is. But he and all his friends are in Discord simultaneously, and they're chatting over that.
I think that's the thing that I found the most interesting is that. Then I think this is a challenge for teachers, is the fact that it is if the class was all talking to each other during class all the time. Like and I think that teachers are. I assume that you guys are conscious of that. But like when I go walk by my kids, they're all in Discord and there's just this massive conversation in the class going on, between each other while the class is going on, commenting about everything, and and they can quietly just sit there typing away, and they're muted and they're typing and going back and forth. And I don't really know, how to, what that means or whether it should be addressed, but it's definitely
I think it's a great thing. I think that personally,
well, I think if you can harness it, as an
usually
instructor.
First class of every quarter, I advocate for it. Say, hey, look around. If any of you want to start a Discord server, and I'm not going to be in it. That's your own place. But I think that's a great influence and a great way of having the students connect. And it's not disruptive. It's not like in a physical classroom, they couldn't do that because their voices would be over top of each other. They'd be, the active passive.
I think the danger, the thing that I always think about is bullies. Like that you just end up with a bunch of behaviors that you don't have control over is the real issue there. Andrew, and then Emily, and then we'll go to Jay.
Yeah, just on the exam stuff, we don't, in this group of schools I'm working with, we're not calling them exams, we're calling them assessments. And we've specifically said in the holiday that's coming up, the week at the end of next week, that no revision should be done, and they should just come to it fresh at the start of the next week and do their best and not get stressed about it. And on the other thing is, the start of all this thing last March, I bought all teachers Bluetooth headsets with mics and so they could walk around the class for the kids that were in class, but still deal with the kids that were outside. I know you don't like hybrid, but it worked really well.
No, that's great. That's great. Emily?
Yeah, I was just going to say the other thing that happened in New York was the Every Student Succeeds Act testing that's required went out as a survey to everyone. So parents, teachers, community members, administrators, and it asked them on a variety of levels, like, which assessments do you think we should keep this year? And it listed all of the state assessments that we do. And then it said what should be tied to those. And I think that was really important because I am okay with administering the assessments because we are in, what we're in and no one was ready for it. And we need to have a data to know where the kids are when we, start the next year. But I don't think normally it's tied to schools being assessed for need and being placed on lists and improvement and teacher APPR, which is their like the teacher observation and grading and whether or not they need to be assessed and things like that. So it was neat that they gave us the option to say, we want the test, but we don't want it to count towards anything other than data collection. And we want, or we want this test to count because it's a Regents test and my kid needs the Regents to graduate, but I don't want my kindergartner or my third grader or other people tested. And it was just a neat way that they put that out. So I'm just hoping that they actually use that data because I think New York, and at least in my area, has been very anti-testing for kids anyway. So parents have the option to pull their kids from the testing. So we've always had a problem with the data anyway. You can't assess a school on their ability to succeed if you're only testing the kids whose parents let them take the test, So anyway, that was a bright-ish kind of spot as in the whole mess that is assessments.
Well, the funny thing is that the things that we need the most, I think, to learn are things that are not assessed well. That's the problem is, building projects and being part of teams and doing things and being actually creating. I think I talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and it's, this little thing in my brain has now become, it's metastasizing around education and me thinking really about what I really want my kids to learn is I want them to learn how to draw, code, cook, build things, do 3D printing, farming, like all the, martial arts, metalwork, wood shop, like that's what I want them to actually learn from school. And then I want them to gather all the other things and media production, of course. But I want them to create things, like learn how to create things all the time. And then in the context of that creating, learn all the other stuff that they need to learn, like math and science and everything else. Because, to do a lot of those things, you could be teaching biology. Like we have conversations when we're making bread about what that is and how it works and the biological reactions and, all the, and we talk about all the, how those things occur. And so you can learn a lot of those things, in the context of actually building things and creating things. And I think that a large source of people's that affect people's moods, in the world today is the fact that they can't do anything. They learned a whole bunch. We've gotten into assessment, and so we took all the things out that I think are the most important out of school because we couldn't measure it, and we decided it wasn't important. But that is being useful and being able to do all those things. Brings an enormous amount of happiness, or satisfiedness. And of course, it doesn't make you a good consumer, which the conspiracy theorist in me is, if you don't let people make things, then they buy them all. If they start making everything, it would throw the whole thing into disarray. Anyway, Jay.
Thanks. I'm glad you said that. I'm actually a theater professor in the area of lighting design in Baltimore. And Alex, what you said is very poignant because I find that the biggest issue that I have with students coming out of K through 12 is that they don't have a culture of imagination.
Yeah.
It's just it's not built.
I mean, it's so like, even just when I'm doing a lot of 3D printing, and the fact that I can sit down and I'm building this weird thing that I was working on. I could just sit down and build a 3D model of it and print it, you know, and have it, you know, and now I'm able to express something that doesn't have a market. It's never going to be something that you could sell. It's just that I'm interested in it. And, you know, I look at how much my kids enjoy food, and the creativeness of it, where they start cooking it the way I cooked it, and now they have a whole bunch of ways that they cook it, you know, and I think that, and again, I look back at my schooling, and the thing that I was the most interested in was stuff like shop class, you know, and the things that, you know, those type of things, and things I was least interested in, probably, except for math and physics, I was pretty interested in, but the rest of it, I was not. I was just kind of like putting up with it.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, and so I think that we need to find ways that we still teach all those things, but maybe not make them the center of the thing. And definitely the testing is a mess. Anyway, Sky.
Yeah, so I could just move into my quick update.
Oh yeah, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's fine. We are going back to face tomorrow for some classes. So we have a scene painting class that's face-to-face. We have a couple of acting classes that are face-to-face, but we're about 80% still going virtual.
Or mask to mask, right?
Or mask to mask is a good way to put it. We are doing 2 productions this year. This semester. One's going to be just a play reading festival, basically new plays, Zoom, in which I'm hoping to take one of the plays and kind of OSC it. So
Amazing.
I could
Can't wait to see that.
Yeah, so I could have my kind of work, what I'm doing. The other one, we're doing live on stage recording with cameras, very much like we were talking about before. And I did put a link in earlier to a company that I just wanted to share is doing amazing work. They're going into schools in some of the worst cities and towns in the United States with iPhone 12s and creating amazing video and productions. And I think that I think that's something that is very worth looking at for education. So I just wanted to share that and point out that I put that in there.
There are a couple schools. So my niece actually they did their school play with video, and I've talked to a couple other folks, and the only thing that I'm starting to see is that the kids, once they created the video of the play, their response was a response that I got back is they didn't want to go back to the theater. They want to keep shooting movies. You know, like they were just like they were like, you know, this was way more because it lasted. It's way longer. It had more stuff to it. It had more of the things that they're used to looking at on YouTube. And so it was interesting that I wondered whether a lot of schools that go into the video production, you know, where the stage may become a set, you know, that you're shooting on, as opposed to, you know, live performances in the way that we had them in the past. It's just an interesting. I don't know whether it's good or bad. It's just an interesting observation. Sky, and then.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to say we have a very serious acting program, so I don't see that happening.
Right.
But it at least will introduce them to that world as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, Jay, to your point, I wish Courtney was here with his reverb. Imagination, the new frontier. So
exactly.
Well, and that's actually the inspiration, and kind of my question amongst this group is, we talk about hybridization as a bad thing. You're going to either focus on one thing or the other, and so how can we have that homogeneous imagination and academic at the same time? Because we need structure, we need system, but we have now we put the cart in front of that horse, and now we're worshiping the cart and it's walkie. So how do we hybridize imagination and academic process? Because, and by the way, Aaron, I'm so going to steal your each one teach one concept. My wife is going to just eat that right up. Thanks.
Yeah. Michael?
I'm curious, because to me, a lot of that relates to immediate gratification. I think kids, we as humans altogether, I think, are more connected, have the drive to learn more when you can see the benefit of what it is you're learning, studying, or creating in a faster time frame. I think that's why video games for children are so addictive, is because you can get to the end of
Yeah, but if
particular
you look
thing
at the
and-
number of hours someone has to put in to master a video game, I mean, kids are putting the time in. The delayed response, the amount of work. My daughter built a house in Roblox that took her, I don't know, weeks of time to build this thing. And she's got the house that she wants. She's got a little scooter. She's got stuff. She spent money on it. I mean, she spent like $30 on Roblox, money or whatever to buy it, to buy pieces for it. And it's just, and all she does is run around. I mean, there's nothing else to do. It's just that she went through the trouble of building this house with no outcome. And so kids are, I think that what we miss a lot of times is that they, especially the kids that are playing Minecraft and especially the kids that are playing Roblox, are putting enormous amounts of effort into something that moves very, very slowly. And I think as educators, we haven't harnessed that energy yet. And I don't, I think that that's something we're missing, because the energy of putting in the hard work of learning how these things work is happening. It's just not happening in school, and that is that's just a lost opportunity there somewhere. And I don't have an answer for it other than I just see it with my kids, that they are spending enormous amounts of effort on things that they're learning they're creating. To get back to what Sky was talking about, they're creating, and what Jay was talking about, they're imagining things and creating things all the time. But school is in this little box of what they have to do. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say, his teachers taught him to read, but Animal Crossing inspired my son to read. To this day, if he hadn't wanted to play the game, he would not have left everything behind and spent hours and hours in that. The other thing I wanted to say real quick is Aubrey and Sam at We Make Movies, they're great people, and if we ever wanted to do a second thing with them, I'm sure they'd come on. They're really great people, and it's fun what they're doing in the inner cities.
Absolutely. Next question.
Aaron Graham is up next with a question, and oops, I think I did that wrong, but that's all right. Has anyone else checked out? This is A. Mitchell's. I'm sorry, this is not Aaron. I've punched something wrong, but I'll get it back. A. Mitchell's. Has anyone else checked out one of the All About Zoom entry meetings on the Zoom Teams? What did you think of it?
Yeah, go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, I mean, I did a onboarding of Zoom real early on, so this might be a new implementation of that or the latest implementation, but yeah, they're very good to give you just a broad overview of what Zoom's capabilities are. I didn't, when I first got to it, I didn't know what it can do. And of course, with people like Andy stepping up, if you stay for the next hour, you're really getting some cool features coming into Zoom and a lot of control over it.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Aaron Graham from the panel here asks, I have some pals, 8 to 10 years old, who have strong math and teaching skills. I'd like for them to create the next platform, not just use one. What are your ideas for project-based learning that will challenge both strengths? They're beyond Minecraft for EDU and code.org.
All right, go ahead, Nick.
So I think the read on that, it said math and tech skills, not teach skills, right?
I'm sorry.
And
right. Math and tech skills.
Yeah. So, I would, if you're thinking they're beyond Minecraft, then go ahead and start opening up an actual game engine. They're completely free. So I use Unreal for a lot of my things. The Unreal Engine, Unity is actually more universally compatible. It works better on Macs than Unreal Engine does. There's also a free game engine called Godot, but basically these are the tools that games like Fortnite are actually developed on, and they are very, very approachable. So you can be very creative with them. There are loads of templates that are drag and drop to create little games, and you can utilize mathematics all the time. I mean, all computer graphics, everything that happens in a game is math. I mean, everything is math. And a lot of it can be abstracted to very simple math, multiplication, addition, subtraction, division. And so it's a great way to, and I think really fun way of really digging into things. And in the end, they could be playing each other's games. So that would be my tip.
My son built a simple game in 4 hours from zero to, I've never used Unreal, to, there's a little tutorial on how to do this little game where you're firing things at things, little balls at things and everything else. And he had it, the engine let you build all of that up. I mean, I definitely agree with Nick, and we're going to get Nick on to talk more about Unreal and other things soon. So go ahead.
One thing I was going to point out, if you're even thinking about this, just set up a free account for yourself on the Epic Unreal Engine website and immediately go to the marketplace and start getting the free for the month things. That's my biggest tip with Unreal, and why part of why I gravitate to it is that the marketplace is filled with pre-built assets. You don't need to know how to build a three-dimensional asset from scratch to start working with it. And particularly right now, this month, one of the free items is a character configuration tool. It's basically, Fortnite style characters that you can, Lego fig to change different torsos, different legs, change their different complexions and hairstyles and all that kind of stuff. It's only free for this month. So it's like first Tuesday of the month that goes away. So if you set up your free account now, just get those free things. You'll have them forever.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to start collecting that.
Yeah, absolutely. Emily?
And I was going to say that maybe Nick has some students that could talk to her kids if they get stuck, or someone on the panel or whatever. Look for those expert people that you can connect the kids to when they have a question, even if it's just by email or, quick videos like, hey, we got stuck here. What do we do now? Or how do I make it look this cool?
And the good news is definitely, I think there's folks that can help them with that. And there's so many resources out there right now for Unreal because there's so many people doing it. So you're really getting it. This isn't like a little edge use case. I mean, everybody's using it, Unreal or Unity right now. So I think that'd be a great place for them to play with. I think you could end up with
I'd be willing to reach, if anyone wants to collaborate on creating like Unreal for kids. I don't know that exists yet. And maybe that's something that's a need.
Oh, all right.
I see a Discord coming.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris, and then Roscoe.
I wanted to speak to the human part of Aaron's question more than the tech part, which is, it sounds like you have a nascent startup going here. If you could get your little pals to learn a little bit about the dynamics of startups and what that the sort of culture of startups is. There are plenty of approachable books and other sources that can tell you about the pitfalls and the possibilities of creating a micro startup culture, and how important it is to talk to your supposed customer, your hoped for customers, to find out not what you guys think is really cool, but what do the people want? What do users beyond the insider group actually want and value, and how can we make that happen? How can we try it out?
Yeah,
I think that would be a good use of part of your time and their time.
Absolutely. Roscoe?
And just like the assets available to 3D world, coding is kind of the same thing. You just get in the community and then you find the different modules. This guy over here did a really good video shader. So I pull that code in, or I ask to pull his code in and use it in what I'm doing. Because when you say platform, there's a lot of work to come up to platform level. And I understand that's a great goal, but they may just getting in the coding community and then being able to talk to these, these modules back and forth and borrow code or supply code, and you find your niche. Your goal may be to be a platform, but you may end up being the best Zoom OSC person out there, or such as that.
Well, and one of the things to think about there is what's great about something like Unreal or Unity is you can start with just creating things without any, just drag and drop, everything is dragging in. Then you go, oh, there's something that I'd like to customize that doesn't exist. So you start learning a little bit of code and you start putting that stuff in. And then you start getting into, I have to do a calculation here. And so now you're doing calculus, like to figure this out, or you're doing trig, or you're doing something else but it's a gradual progression from creating something that's really cool, and you can create really cool things without any code, to getting to a point, to growing to a point where you need more. Next question.
Moving on, this one comes from John Idelson here in the panel from Monterey, California. What do people think you think of the new California education web resources site, One Learning Community?
I think I saw it and I couldn't quite make out what it was. You know, like you said it to me and I looked at it and I don't really know what to do next. Like I think that was the I didn't know what to do after I saw it. You know, so it was like, okay, that's interesting, and I wasn't, the call to action wasn't clear. Maybe because I'm not a teacher, it's not for me.
Yeah, that was the initial press announcement, but it's got a lot of the goals of what we're talking about, office hours. It was developed for the California Department of Education. It's a project that has 4 goals, and the first one is to get high quality digital learning resources from multiple providers, a place where educators can exchange their instructional strategies, let the CDE have a place where people know what the state are doing, and then a network for exchanges and forums. And it was built on previous work that's been done. But you know, the California State Parks are one of the resources. Smithsonian is one of the resources. So it's a way of getting teachers in the community to link with high quality digital resources. It's literally just out. It says it's California, but it's open to educators all over. So you could go sign up for it. And I'm just, you know, probably not today, but I'd love to get more of the office hours education community onto this site and, you know, say what they think about it and become resources.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to, I mean, if there was enough interest on that side, it'd be fun to expand what we're doing here to include folks there too. You know, like put more resources up here, make this longer or make it more often, or those types of things could be possible. You know, we don't do it more than once a week because it's, I don't know if they're, you know, I don't know if the educators could do more than once a week. If we had a much larger group of people, if there were thousands of people that knew about it and were coming to it, you know, you could do it where you had critical mass every day even to do it. So it's just a matter of knowing how those folks would funnel in is really the only limit to what we're doing here. Go ahead, Emily, and then Chris.
I love the concept, and I've been pushing for something similar in New York, especially because we just followed California's lead on the whole vetting apps and getting addendums and knowing, you know, privacy policies and things like that. My question would be is it too big? Is it so vast? I love what they're trying to do, but I think what we always run into is how do we contain it, because things are so fluid and moving and constantly changing. But I went to the site earlier this week when you posted it, and I was like, oh, this is really exciting, another resource for me. But a lot of the resources that are on there right now are ones that I knew about, but as new stuff comes up, that'd be really cool. And then the other question I have is, since it's the California Department of Education, is it their community?
It was built there. The California Department of Ed had a number of curriculum-based groups that had communities prior to this. So there's already about 20,000 teachers who have played with some of the aspects of this. But the unique part about this is it is sponsored by the Department of Ed, and it's statewide. Yeah, and like nice. You said, a lot of the people knew about these resources, but a lot of the teachers didn't know about the resources.
Yeah. And they forget. And I mean, it's because it's so overwhelming, the amount of resources that are out there. You'll forget that the National Park has a program or California State Parks has a program. And then you're doing a unit and you're like, oh, shoot, I forgot about that. So if it's something that they can constantly go back and reflect to, that's really cool. Is the stuff that they're sharing out, is it vetted through if the teacher shares something, does it go onto the site or does it get vetted somehow first?
It can't get vetted.
That's our other problem.
Yeah, part of the challenge here is that we're, thinking large, that we're hoping that a principal or a local school will have a community within their school. So this is a shared space, and then they could go to bigger and broader as they get out from that. All the partners are vetted, like the Smithsonian is vetted, Read, Write, Think is vetted, Monterey Bay Aquarium's on it, ports are on it. So the rich digital resources are vetted, but they don't vet the individual teacher assignments unless they were part of these curriculum teams that created curriculum resources. So there's different levels of vetting.
That's cool. Chris, and then Andrew.
I clicked on the link that John published on Discord, which is basically the rollout press release. This is going to be great. And I had a flashback to an experience way back in the 70s when the first time I went to a superstore, a store that are pretty common now, but it was acres and acres of floor space and shelving that went out of sight into the clouds. And I felt, for the first time, I felt that agoraphobia. You know, this is overwhelming. I'm not comfortable here. This is too big, too much, too soon. And I had that same feeling to an extent, reading this press release and seeing, wow, this is awesome. But you know, are there lions and tigers lurking around the corner that I can't see? And should I really go farther into this forest, or back off and wait to hear?
That was good feedback, Chris, because this actually was a press release from the lead of the developer who did it for the state. This is not how the state is rolling it out. They're going to do it very locally. So I realized that, you know, this was the fire hose of it. The team that did this did the learning lab for Smithsonian. The team started at a county office of ed, so they've been doing this for 20 years. So he's sort of, you know, he's proud of what he did, but it is sort of drinking from the fire hydrant.
Yeah. So that's my feedback.
Yeah. Well, actually, if you notice, you have to figure out where to get to the site here. I didn't. There is going to be a different rollout for the individual schools.
The one thing I will say is that we do have to reach critical mass with the teachers. You know, so the thing is that right now there's like little groups like what we're doing here, and there's not any, you know, place where there's critical mass of where we can work with a lot of teachers all at one time. You know, there's a lot of things that I could do, for instance, you know, where, you know, in my opinion, there should be a place every day that teachers can come and talk about presentations, or talk about using their iPhone for training, or talk in different hours, that they know that they just show up for those every day, that there's a couple hundred teachers and there's a handful of people that are talking to them about it, like what we do with office hours. And they just need those zones covered. And it'd be something that, you know, people like me would love to do, but I have no way to get the teachers there. You know, so I mean, we have this little group here that we use, and it's one of my favorite conversations. It's just that what we need are folks somewhere to funnel in, you know, 10,000 teachers into the system, or 100,000 teachers into the system, so that not because that we're going to talk to all of them at the same time. It's just so that when you flip a switch, you're talking to enough of them to reach critical mass at the same time. What we have to stop doing is repeating the same thing for every 15 teachers or every 100 teachers, and be able to have these kind of larger plenaries that are 300 to 500 to 1,000, where we're all trading ideas at a higher velocity. You know, and I think that that's the, you know, I think that would make a big difference. And I think that when I see something like this, I go, oh, it'd be really fun to play in that area. It's just that, and I'm happy playing in this area, you know, where we're all talking about it and figuring it out. But at some point, we have to take what we're learning here and what we're doing here and put it on a larger platform, you know, to impact more teachers at the same time.
Well, I think that's the goal here. I mean, the fact that this is the first time there's a statewide site like this endorsed by the California Department of Ed. There was the history project, there were the other projects. So it's going to, when it gets launched, they'll pull in these previous projects. So we'll have a base of about 20 or 30,000 teachers who didn't use this platform, but had used it. But the fact that a lot of teachers and school districts and even school boards go, well, you know, there's all these great sites, but we don't know with them. We're not, this says California Department of Ed. And that really is a buffer for a lot of faculty and teachers.
And what I think has been great is, it has been great and will continue to be great about this Saturday session is that we're all trading notes and we're all figuring out while things are moving slowly. We're thinking through it and we're talking through it, and we're, you know, able to kind of, the hardest thing is that once you have 100 or 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 people, the machine is now moving very, very fast. And I think we have a better idea now. I know I have a better idea of what would work and not work, learning from the educators that come every week. Than I had when we started it. And so I think that that's a real, but I think that it would be interesting. Like, I just watch what my kids' teachers are doing, and I just feel like somebody's got to provide more guidance. Anyway, Andrew.
Yeah, back in 2001, I took over a city about 100 schools, and they asked us to put in place e-learning across the city. So we built a platform, and we rolled it out, and it had got community at heart. But then after 6 months, there was maybe, a couple of hundred teachers using it. So what I had to do was send out all my advisors into groups of schools and actually talk to them about how their curriculum and how their schemes of work would fit into what we were providing, and get real deep down and dirty with each individual school, almost, or with a cluster of schools, and make activities fit into what they were doing rather than them having to fit into what we wanted to do. And we flipped it around, and we got sort of 50-60% of use after about 18 months of teachers and kids. And that was a real win. And that's almost what you've got to do. You've got to take on the needs of the teachers rather than what you think is a great idea.
The thing that I think that I'm looking at is just being there to answer questions. The teachers are trying to figure out what they're trying to figure out. I don't even need this. The model that we use here is that it's all driven by whoever raises their hand and votes questions up or down. And so I think that then you just respond to what the teachers need, and not there's not a curriculum. I mean, there can be a curriculum, but and you could do those things as well. But I think that I guess I feel like for some teachers, they just need somewhere to go. Anyway, let's move on. We're going to run out of time. Next question.
Ella Armstrong from Denver, Colorado is up next with, what are the most cost-effective headset mics for Zoom, etc., if you are buying them for all the teachers?
See, this is exactly the question that we want to be able to answer for folks as we talk through it. So go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, the Polson and the Pile are the two microphones. I'm actually wearing a Polson right now, and then we put it into, oops, I can't pull it out fast enough, a little TechRise adapter, it goes into a USB-A slot. This is what a TechRise, where's my camera up there? So that's a little TechRise. So that whole combination is under $50 right there. That's about as inexpensive as we can get with the quality that we consider acceptable. The only caveat is it doesn't work if you have to walk around a classroom. And that's where you get into some inexpensive wireless solutions or an iPhone. You put an iPhone in your pocket, you talk to the microphone on your iPhone, you have it join the meeting, therefore you can walk around and get good audio.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up, but certainly I can put it into Makana. We bought 500 at the beginning of March last year for all our teachers, Bluetooth ones, and they've been really good. I just bought them on Alibaba from China. I got them to send me an example one over first, and we tested it, and they've been really good. And it means the teacher can walk around the classroom. And
how much were they per unit?
Everybody can. They were a little under $20 per unit.
Yeah.
So they were affordable for schools, and they're actually very good. And maybe next time I'm on the next Saturday, I might put one on and you can hear it. But I'll look up where we got them from and put it into Makana.
Yeah. The biggest thing that we found with the Piles and the Polsons is that their frequency response is fairly wide. So the hard part we have with the other ones is they work reasonably well, but their frequency response for a lot of the Bluetooth ones is very thin. It's there to make it very intelligible for a conversation. The problem is it puts an enormous amount of wear and tear on the brain. So one of the things that we're finding is that limited spectrum audio is one of those contributing factors to what we call Zoom fatigue. Is highly compressed, limited spectrum. When it's full spectrum, people can listen to it forever. When you limit that spectrum and you compress it, they can only listen to it for a while before they get really tired. And so these are the things that I don't think that a lot of us are taking into account, or a lot of people when they're buying things, is to think about that spectrum. That if that spectrum isn't, it really needs to be, 500 to 10,000 or 500 to 8,000 minimum. That's the spectrum it needs to live inside of. If it's doing like an 800 to 2,000 or a 1,000 to 4,000, and it sounds like a gamer headset, it's one of the contributing factors to why people are turning it off or not showing up or not wanting or getting tired at the end of the day and not thinking about the subject matter, but really fighting, the pain of that. It's like things we don't think about. Like I'm really touchy about warm rooms because I can tell you that I don't have to do the math for you. NASA did the math, and you are more effective at, like people can get cold and they can put on layers, but you are more effective at 67 degrees than you are at 75 degrees. Like, like there are handfuls of people that aren't that way. I get that. But NASA did an enormous amount of research, and they very quickly, because you slow down, at a different temperature. But these are the kind of things, like that's kind of like that mic thing. I'm going to move on because we're running out of time. Next question.
Moving on to Tony Mobley's question from Newman, Georgia. Do not know if any of you know about app advice. I just wanted to share this. All kinds of paid apps that were free for that day, education, games, and so forth. iOS apps use, if need, a question at the end. That didn't track well for me.
I don't quite understand that.
I was just saying that if you needed a question, you could use it. I was just trying to share the information. I got this from iOS Today probably about 6 years ago, and it has some fantastic educational game features to it. And they started like 99 cents up to about $10.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is it. And I'm just going to that's the one that sort of got my attention today.
It's great.
And there are different prices. So I just wanted to share that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tony.
Nice.
Yep. Next question.
Okay, and the last one marked EDU at this point is from Emily Russo here in the panel from Red Hook, New York. What do you use to create backgrounds for OBS? Is there a better file type? Some of my teachers have the mental space to learn OBS, so I want to make it look really good.
Are you talking about file type or app to do the editing?
Either way, it's just the building of the backgrounds and customizing it and making it look like some of them want to do things where when they talk about, they do read alouds and they want to talk about the cover of the book and the spine of the book. They want the words to pop up at the bottom, but they also want a background for their camera and the book off to one side. And they're getting a little complicated, which I'm fine with. But then it's like, what looks the best? Because some stuff we've pulled in comes in kind of grainy. So I didn't know if there was like a resolution or a program or an app that would be better and easier for us to use to create those things than something else.
So as far as layout goes, what I would recommend is using whatever presentation tool that they have access to. So whether it's slides or PowerPoint or Keynote, Keynote is by far the best. Like for layout, I mean, it's not even if they have a Mac, or an iOS. The iOS I don't know how to create as well on as I do on a Mac. But the tools in Keynote to remove backgrounds, it's Magic background tool, and a lot of it's layout tools, there's something about the way it kerns and builds that everything looks nicer than it does in PowerPoint, and I think some of it also has to do with anti-aliasing. So it anti-aliases the text better than PowerPoint, and again, this gets into these really subtle things of why. A lot of us look at PowerPoint and slides and think they look cheaper than Keynote. And it's because of little things like anti-aliasing, the EPSs and everything else at a higher level is one of the reasons it looks cleaner. Now, when you bring images in, so here's the trick that I do for a lot of my presentations. Almost all my presentations are white. They're a white background. And the reason I do that for those, and it may not work as well for a background, but almost all my presentations are because I pull images off the web, like a bandit. So I search Google and I grab images. Now, one thing you can't do is drag an image from Chrome, for instance, into Keynote, but you can drag it to the web, you can just drag from image search. You can drag it right onto your desktop, then pull it straight into, I pull it into desktop, and then I pull it into Keynote. I look for images that have white backgrounds. So I look for all these, if I'm looking for an object or I'm looking for something, I look for images that have white backgrounds. One of the little tricks to it is make sure that you use the Google tool in the tools under search for large. So just if you just do a search for images, you get all kinds of different sizes. If you search only for large, the only thing you'll see is, I don't know it's like 600 by 800 or something or larger. That's going to give you a lot more. Now, some of them will come in at 2,000, 3,000, whatever, and that's fine. It makes it even better. If you find those objects over white and you bring it in, there's a tool inside of Keynote, which is under image, which is the Magic Alpha tool or whatever, and you just click on that background and it'll just get rid of it. You can start, but It might have a little bit of a white edge. If you're doing it over white, it doesn't matter. You can't see it. So it looks perfectly clean all the time as you put it together. It does a pretty good job no matter what, but it does a great job at that. And so the thing is that, but even if you're using any presentation tool, however you do it, get the large images. You want to be looking at, you should probably think 800 by 600 is kind of the minimum size of an image that you should put into any presentation. And I'm usually looking for things that are 1920 by 1080 minimum. Even if I'm only going to make them small, I start off with the big version of it, and then it's going to look a lot cleaner. But that's the easiest. That's the easiest solution to grabbing lots of images. Of course, if I'm doing something externally, I don't use somebody else's images. I then go to iStock, or I go to Shutterstock, or I go to I buy stuff if I'm gonna. But if I'm doing like a internal, this is how we're doing it. I just I'm constantly grabbing images to make that work. But the Google tool that's looking for large images is kind of the key to the whole operation. And then in general, you're looking for JPEGs. I mean, JPEG is what you want. One thing to remember is if they want to show something different, then if they want to really have people read it, keep it sharp. But the thing that really makes a difference is your background should always be softer than you. So you put it in the background, your background right now through your webcam, even your background is a little softer than the foreground, the person talking. When people create sharp backgrounds, when everything's in focus behind them, and they have and then they're a little softer than that because their webcam isn't that high resolution, it makes them look bad and weird, and so it's part of why virtual backgrounds don't work. And so, so thinking about that, I think makes a big difference. And so, be fun to do. This gets back into what John for John Iddles for the website. It would be fun to have a session every week where we build things, backgrounds for teachers, or examples for teachers, where they just get to that we piece all this kind of question together. But Emily, did that answer your question?
Yeah, the only, I guess, the other thing was so the JPEG file, if you create a background and you pull it in for your whole show, and then you're going to have your frames, the JPEG works better than like a PNG file, or
it's lighter. It's just lighter. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Roscoe's
okay. I have one. I agree with everything Alex said, except before I pull it into Keynote or the presentation software, I take it into Preview and I do my alpha channeling there, that little magic wand. I do it there because as a teacher, I like to reuse assets over and over again. And then so I do pull it in, but I also put that asset into a folder. Here's all my car alphas, or all the images. And yes, I use the PNG format at that point in time, because a JPEG will then get converted to a PNG in Preview.
That's a genius tip. I'm just saying, I don't do that because I'm always going fast and furious. I didn't even think about doing it. I didn't even realize that tool was in Preview. So
yes, it is.
Genius tip, because that also means, Emily, you could have teachers sharing all those assets, pulling alphas and sharing assets and being able to, and then even the cool thing about what Roscoe's talking about is you could save those ping files out and use them in slides or PowerPoint or anything else, so it actually
over and over again.
And you could build folder structures. That would be, that's great.
Yeah, that's the idea too, is when I do the trainings, I give them access to a folder. That's why I was going to build them some oh shoot, the guy who did it for us on Discord way back in the middle of the summer, who taught me by his little setup from Italy. But anyway, he gave us like a background to use like right out of the box. And so I thought for the teachers, what I'll do is I'll create a box of like, oh, here's some frames you can use, here's some backgrounds you can use, here's some lower thirds you can use, and you just have to change things that you want to change, edit it into what you want it to do. But it gives them something that they can basically use out of the box, so they don't have to create everything from scratch. That's genius. So yeah. Genius, so I just needed to know what file type, so I didn't give them stuff that came out blurry.
Yeah. So download things. Just make sure that they're at least 800 by 600 or bigger. Use Roscoe's idea. Save out pings, and you'll be off to the races. The next step over that is using something like Affinity Designer or Affinity Photo, where those will let you do a lot more complicated processes, and they're not that expensive. A lot of times, just keep your eye on. They go on sale. I think there might even be an educator pricing. It's like $20 or something, and that's going to let you do much more refined, much closer to Photoshop without paying for Photoshop. Anyway, not that I'm bitter. So we're going to jump over. Andy may be already over in the other meeting, or everyone's waiting for me. So we're going to jump over to the other meeting. We're going to move into OSC. I want to thank all the educators. If you're not going over to OSC and hanging out with us, thank you so much. I learned so much from all of you when we have these conversations, and so I just really appreciate the conversation every morning.
Alex, do you want to direct the first timers who might be in education as to how to get over into the OSC thing if they want to?
Yeah, can someone put that into Mukana if you wanna see this? The link goes out every morning. It was in the link that was there, but I'll go ahead and post it in here real quick. So that if you're in Mukana here, I think someone else already did it, but we'll put it in there just one more time. Go ahead and click to that, and that'll take you into the new meeting, which we will have that we're going to be talking about Zoom OSC, which basically lets you take over OSC and redesign everything. So if you're interested in that, come join us over there. And again, thank you again to all the educators for coming. And I've already decided after Zoom OSC finishes, we're going to keep it at 9 o'clock this time, but we're not going to do it again. The next classes will be 10 or later so that we have that extra loose time that we keep on talking about education. Because I think the 1 hour isn't, I'm realizing very quickly that we're just getting going. I realized, we usually do go longer. So we'll extend that out once we get through the training. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. I need my controls back, though. Let's see here.
That's Beju.
Beju. Where's Beju? I can't get out. I'm stuck.
He already went to the other meeting. No, maybe.
No, Beju's here. I just can't. I need to be host.
I'm clicking to make you host, but it seems to be a little sticky today.
Interesting. Let me see. I can probably force it by just going to the other meeting. So let's.
Yeah. Let me try it.
Yeah. Thank you, Beju. My internet was stupid. I dumped out twice, so I thought maybe I should hand it off.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go.